Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first official episode of the season of the Wrestling Draft. It's the beginning of a new year. We had our selection show, which you may have caught on our YouTube channel, and this is now the show we usually have. If you're new, after every selection show, we have a show before the official season starts, before any scores are calculated, where we get together the co-hosts and we look over everyone's teams with a day or so of hindsight, try and make our predictions as to who may or may not work out in the end, and just give our immediate reactions to each of the selections. And if you may have missed the selection show here on our YouTube channel, you might have noticed also if you followed us from our previous show that you're also able to view us on YouTube. You're seeing us on Thursday if you're watching it on YouTube the day it comes out. If you're listening to it the day it comes out, it's on a Friday on the audio feed or wherever you get your podcasts. And maybe you're listening to us on a different day. Maybe you're busy lives. I don't know. But hopefully you're listening to it. And we welcome you to the start of this new season. For us, it's the 26th season of our fantasy draft. It's the first season under the Wrestling Draft banner. And you can follow along on our socials and here on YouTube. So I'm Scott McLeod. You may not have seen me on the selection show. I wasn't available, but I am one of the co-hosts here at the show. And usually with me and Dave, it becomes more because Dave just has all his opinions. He loves to get his opinions out. So Dave's become more of the colour guy in our little team. I try to stick to the unbiased play-by-play man here. But judging by that selection show, I now need to be the fucking personality around here as well, because Jesus, it was lacking on that show. But David Haughney has joined me to break down the season. Dave, welcome to the first official show of this new year.
I've got more personality in one pinky than you do in your entire being. And
wow.
I was deciding, it's still the summertime, so I've decided to take a quick trip and record from the beach this time around, because the selection show process was jarring enough. Me and Stephen went for at least a solid 90 minutes, and I'm already getting picked on by Andy Mitchell, the man without beer. And I just want to point out that, he may have been going to the gym longer than I have, but I can already lift.
Oh, Jesus, here we go. Yeah, Dave's now bragging about how much he can lift in the gym. I mean, Jesus, you're already on thin ice with HR for your comments about Mariah May, so just steady on, pal. Yes. I was on the selection show, but, you've seen how it happened there. I think we're still very early on, so our Listeners League isn't official yet. People haven't selected the team. Not everyone has signed up yet, so there's a chance if you're listening to us now before the season starts, the season officially kicks off this Monday on Raw. You do have a chance to join our Listeners League and win the chance to next season come up to the main Contributors League. The way the Listeners League works is basically the total picks that have been selected by the Contributors League are all put out, and you select one from each round to form your team. So it's a different strategy. You're not doing it in the moment as we are, but you're basically looking at the teams on paper and trying to construct your own team. Some people argue it's harder, some people argue it's easier. We've had that debate too many times. I don't want to get into that now.
And just to remind everybody that it is, for those that are competing in the Listeners League, it is going to be a 3-2 split of men and women plus a tag team. So you can have 3 men, 2 women, 3 women, 2 men, but one of your picks must be a tag team. So choose your round selection wisely, because the selection of tag teams and various picks are widespread across the board this season.
Before we get into the actual teams, Dave, I think there's been a lot of discussion in the group chat, everyone giving their own opinions about the contributors. Everyone's got their takes. And we are over the course of the season, one of the things we'd like to do is have members of the team on. I think we'll need to have Andy on sooner rather than later, because the heat is just getting too much in that group chat. Bloody hell, it's become like John and Brett in 97, the heat going on right now. Everyone's picking sides. But we're all talking, giving their opinions. But one thing that's going...
I do have a bone pick with him as well, because he did do a spare change in the 10 cash in on me some years ago, and I've still to give him the receipt for that.
Dave not looked the type to hold a grudge, you can clearly tell. That was still during COVID when that happened, I think. But one thing we were discussing was who needs a win, really, in terms of, because we're going for 26 seasons. The current record right now is 6 overall season wins from David Campbell, the GOAT, across both singles and tag team. Then it's myself with 5, and then several others. And Dave, you are a multiple time winner, but yes, but most of your most recent success in the seasons have come when you're part of a tag team. Your last singles win was all the way back in season 3. So I think your name is one that comes up as someone who needs a win more than most, in
Maybe,
my
maybe,
opinion.
but let's just point out, okay, I've won a solo season and I've won a tag team season, so I'm like a chameleon when it comes to this. I've just had a very bad run of uh run of luck, I think. They had the old Scylla curse on me a couple of times. Jey Uso did fuck all in the 2021 Royal Rumble when I had him as my captain. It was, yeah, and I was winning that season by at least 30 points. I ended up finishing third because he didn't show up. So yeah, I put it down to a combination of bad luck and injuries, but I think, as long as I can get a good juggernaut season, and because it's been a while since I don't think I've ever had a juggernaut season, to be fair. But yeah, that's probably going to be my best chance of winning.
Those are new or juggernaut performance from what we talk about in our verbiage here is usually when that one pick amongst
Hmm.
everyone, usually a captain, is the best performing pick and basically single-handedly on points just carries somebody
Mm.
through like a season. And that's happened. It's happened to me a few times. But like I said, you mentioned that season 21. I'm pretty sure I stole that season out from under you, partially
Hmm.
thanks to Sasha Banks at the time.
Yep.
So I am a five-time winner. I've done it all five by myself. So clearly I don't play well with others.
Hmm.
I barely tolerate co-hosts in this bloody show. But the
Well, you're stuck with me, so deal with it.
uh, but I'm very keen to get up to tie the goat once again. And an interesting thing because we go between the big four pay-per-views, and I and like so this is SummerSlam to Survivor Series. We start this Monday on Raw, so we've missed like the first week after the initial pay-per-view. Out
Hmm.
of all the seasons, Dave, I've never actually won the SummerSlam to Survivor Series season. I've
Hmm.
done I've won Survivor Series to Rumble twice. I've done Mania to SummerSlam twice, and I've done the Mania Rumble to Mania season the one time it wasn't a tag team season.
Hmm.
So I've yet to win this particular gap of time. So that's something
Yeah.
I'm chasing down.
The Survivor Series one's a bit of a tricky one because you've obviously got the fallout from SummerSlam, and it's typically a little bit of a hangover period, for the first couple of weeks. So I'm kind of glad we're not scoring until next week. And there's already events being lined up. You've got Clash in Paris happening. You've got Forbidden Door both happening end of August time. So you're going to have a lot of representation there. And then you're going to round it off with arguably maybe a War Games match at Survivor Series, maybe two as well, one for the men, one for the women. So a lot of opportunity to be had with picks across the board.
Like I said, on Monday, the 11th of August, will be the first official day of scoring for the season. Our first big, because like pay-per-views or premium live events, or whatever you want to call them, are where the big points are. So on the 24th of August is our first big weekend because on the same day we have both Forbidden Door and NXT Heatwave, and then the following Sunday we
Hmm.
have Clash in Paris.
Yep.
It's weird, after Clash, we only have originally announced Crown Jewel and Survivor Series on the WWE side of things, and maybe
Hmm.
another NXT in there somewhere, but on the AEW side, because I think there are some people who haven't really loaded up on the AEW picks this season, but AEW has after Forbidden Door, All Out, Wrestle Dream, and Full Gear. Plus, they do
Yeah.
like to do those big episodes of Dynamite in between that technically aren't pay-per-views, but they're booked like a pay-per-view with the big matches they have.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
maybe some
yeah,
AEW picks that really.
we've said it before, don't sleep on AEW. Like they've got a hidden treasure trove of competitors in the scoring, and as we've detailed on past seasons, you don't sleep on AEW, especially on throughout the mid card because you've got a ton of mid card titles that people could be vying for.
But before we go into it, because I'll say this is for people who are just maybe tuning in for the first time, because every show may be someone's first show. But before we get into this, teams, do you have anyone off the top of your head in terms of our competitors who has been performing particularly well, is usually finishing near the top, but you think desperately needs to get their first win this season?
Ooh. I want to see Robert Shaw get his first solo win. He's been working his way up from the Listeners League to the main league now. And me and him have come close to winning the tag team season a couple of times, but I think he needs to break out on his own a little bit. And judging from what I've seen on paper, I think his team's certainly going to be an interesting one to talk about.
I think I agree with certain people in their chat, and I say Gary Kernahan. He's a great success as part of a tag team, but I think as a singles
Hmm.
competitor, he's never, always been close but never there. But he's becoming
Won
the
a
people's
season with
champion in
yours
that
truly
regard.
as well.
Yes, he's earned it for having to put up with Dave and carry Dave for a season. He deserves to have his first solo season win. But
Mm.
begin going from who picked in last place up to first, and we'll get our quick thoughts on each team and how we think they'll perform. And also at the end of the episode, we will talk about who we think we're going to give guess who comes in first. We try not to pick either of ourselves, no matter how happy we may be with our teams. Who comes in first? Who's going to come in last? And
Hmm.
predict a dark horse pick for the season. Uh, and starting in from left in terms of winners, Stephen Wilson alongside JP, they both won last year's Power Tag Team. So Stephen took last place as is tradition for the winner of the previous season, but JP also winning in the Listeners League granted the chance to pick from first. So they are bookending the draft selections. We're going to start from the bottom and go with Stephen Wilson, who starts out great with Rhea Ripley and also Obafemi, who he's going to face either Javon Evans or Trick Williams at NXT Heatwave. He's seen there's no obvious end in sight, I don't think, for his title reign, so he's a solid pick. But Rhea Ripley is a first round pick. I think is a
Hmm.
no-brainer. She's been a constant favorite for a first round. After that, you got CM Punk, who maybe probably disappeared from TV after the angle at SummerSlam. Got LA Knight, who's being set up to take some falls, I think, at the hands of Seth Rollins, DIY, and Marina Shafir. So I think it starts out great. His performance in the season will rely heavily on how long Oba keeps that belt and the constant presence of Rhea Ripley. I think a lot has been put on those top two people.
Yeah, like Rhea Ripley with the captaincy on it. I'm not entirely sure, given that you've got a couple of NXT events coming up, and if you look at the last two big matches that Rhea had at SummerSlam and Evolution, both ended up with losses. Whereas Obafemi, meanwhile, has been on an absolute tear as NXT champion. So I think he's made a bit of a faux pas not putting the captaincy on Obafemi because the last couple of times he's been picked, he's always been sort of second choice when it
Mhm.
comes to having the captaincy. But you fail to realize, he's more or less undefeated in singles competition throughout the entire of 2025. So you could have had it on as early as the Royal Rumble to Mania season. And the fact that nobody's picked up on that is pretty staggering. But
Mhm.
that's just my one gripe with his team. I think CM Punk and LA Knight, they're obviously got a lot of exposure on Raw given their ongoing feud with the Vision. And DIY and Marina Shafir, nice way to round things off. He dips into the SmackDown pool of tag team wrestlers. I think that was a safe bet for a tag team, and I think they're good heel characters, so they'll get plenty of appearances backstage. Marina Shafir's association with the Death Riders as well, I think that wraps it up pretty nicely. So on paper, I'm happy with Stephen Wilson's team, although I think my only gripe is I think he should have put the captaincy on Obafemi first and maybe see how things panned out with Rhea Ripley.
I think Rhea, though, I think he's going off her track record in terms of being able to carry a team for a lot of people, like me particularly. I've one season just on the strength of Rhea Ripley, and she was barely wrestling at that time, even though Judgment Day were very popular. So I think he's going off of that. Like Punk and LA Knight would be solid picks and further up if it weren't for what's seemingly happening just coming out of SummerSlam with the feuds that they're involved in. I think Marina Shafir, I can understand her as a final round pick because by that point, Stephen needed a woman to get the 3-2 split. I don't think the options were very many there. I think Stephen, I'm predicting right now, he'll be in the lower half of the table. I think he'll
Mm-hmm.
be higher than he would have been had he not had Rhea Ripley. I think it might say
Uh,
something about Rhea Ripley coming out of SummerSlam that she's went as late in the first round as she did.
I'm guessing upper mid card for this team. I mean, on paper, it looks impressive, but I don't know. I just feel like there's something not quite hitting the mark. And I think captaincy choice is going to play a big factor in Steven's team.
Right. Talking about choices here, right? I'm going to ignore the rest of these teams because I want to talk about one pick in
Mm-hmm.
particular, and I want to, call you and Stephen out on some things on this. Because then we have Man Without Bear, which is the team
Beer.
name of Andy Mitchell, with Sami Zayn in the first round, and I think you and
Mm,
Stephen were far, far too harsh on Sami
really?
Zayn as a first round pick. I definitely think you guys were. We have seen far worse first round picks in these previous drafts. You know, Ricochet getting
Oh, it
picked in
doesn't
the
mean
first
this is a
round.
good one.
But like you guys were kind of clowning on Andy Mitchell during that selection show, and that's starting all this beef in the chat is your opinions on Sammy because I think you said that Sammy maybe survives so Rumble will be a solid pick in the first round. I think Sammy, he's coming off the SummerSlam with the win over Karrion Cross. I think that's momentum for him. I think if you want to build him up as a Rumble winner, potentially next year, you need to start now, and hopefully he'll start getting wins on TV. If Jey Uso's going to continue his thing with the vision, and he needs a tag partner, and Roman's not around. I think Sammy's a prime person to get in that spot. So I definitely think this is a better pick for first round than you may have given credit for him. It's interesting that he's not the captain, however.
Mm. See, that's me thinking Andy's probably backed out on his initial choice because more often than not, your first round pick is going to be your team captain because it's somebody that you absolutely must have on your team at that stage. But the fact that he put the captaincy on his round 2 pick of Finn Balor and JD McDonough, the Raw Tag Team Champions, that makes more sense. Why didn't choose them first round? I'm a bit confused about. But then again, he could have also chose Rhea Ripley and then got maybe his second choice straight off the bat, given the order of the snake draft. So I don't know. Sammy just feels like something without direction a little bit now that they're just trying to bury this whole push Cross agenda that they've got going on. Carrying Cross's contract apparently up this weekend. So yeah, it does make me wonder maybe they're just going to let him go. And then Sammy's kind of got nothing to work with at this stage. So a directionless round 1 pick is not something you want to be dealing with in this case.
So where would you have had Sami Zayn then? Like,
At
what do you think?
least,
Ideally, Sami Zayn is
at best, round 3. Like,
round three at best.
yeah. I mean, look at some of the other picks that went in like round 5 and stuff. You've got Chelsea Green, you've got uh, MJF, Jade Cargill, Alistair Black. A lot of really noticeable names that have had, more interesting programs than Sami Zayn has had in the last sort of few weeks. And the whole underdog saga is starting to feel a little bit dry at this point. So I just don't see him in a position to be winning the Royal Rumble at this point. I think there's at least 2 much more deserving people to win that side of things.
I think Sami Zayn's going to surprise you as a pick because David Campbell, former host of the show, a veteran of the draft, was keen to point out that Sami did outscore Rhea Ripley last season. He mentioned how much lower Rhea Ripley went this season. Also, we're leading up to Survivor Series, and as Andy would point out, Sami Zayn's been a fixture in the War Games matches these last few years. I think if they're building to maybe, I can see a Vision versus Sami and Friends kind of match at the end of the season. So I think that Sami's going to be very much a dark horse pick overall for the entire season.
Is it worthy of round 1 though? I don't think so.
You know what? I think he'll surprise you. But looking at then Balor and Jamie McDonough, I think again, Presence of Judgment Day, I think Balor and JD are both better off as a tag team fit rather than picking individually. We've got Bianca Belair, Athena, Jim Uso, and Sheamus. Sheamus, I guess, the last round. Jim Uso's getting more of a presence, helping Jacob Fatu against the MFTs. Athena, people think hopefully she's getting pushed towards that AEW World Women's Championship level, and Bianca Belair's I think she's getting over an injury, but I think she is slowly coming back onto TV. So what do you make to the rest of the team?
Yeah, I think he really picked up towards the end of this selection process. So, like Jimmy Uso and Sheamus, pretty much 2 solid undercard talents at this point, and Jimmy obviously gets a lot of feature whenever MFT is involved. Sheamus, I still stand by the belief that he should be the Intercontinental Champion at this point, but he has to have an undercard feud with Rusev at the minute. So as long as he can get appearances and matches on his resume, I think having him at round 6 is probably a safe bet, especially when you're scraping at the bottom of the barrel.
Then we go into Matt Smith's team. All about the values, as we say. He's made some unusual picks in the past, but he started off really strong with Dominic Mysterio, Mercedes Moné, who is making a return this week on AEW. Obviously, it won't count to any points, but she's getting back in there, and I think she's scheduled to defend her TBS title at Forbidden Door. So you got Dominic, who's on a hot run, hanging down NXT Tag Team Champions, sort of struggling to do a big match with Kat at Forbidden Door, Chelsea Green, and then I think he was prompted by other people to do this, but Mr. Iguana in the last round. I mean, I don't see it working out much, but then again, Grant McRobbie's dice picked the Hardys in the lead up to Mania, and they actually showed up on NXT. So, never say never in here, but I think Dominic as a first round pick is solid considering he's weirdly getting over as unlikely it might seem as a baby face. Like people are chatting for him coming out of SummerSlam.
It is a weird case of Dominic Mysterio getting cheered, even though he's meant to be a heel. But yeah, I mean, Intercontinental Champion, he's been as early as round 2 in the draft selection, and he scored big points when he was NXT North American Champion because he was just all over the product. I'm pretty sure he main evented all 3 of WWE's main shows in 1 week at the same time. So, well, not at the same time, but you get what I mean. Yeah, him going round 1, I think that was pretty smart, and he's going to be having appearance points with Judgment Day as well because he's a walking heat magnet. So Matt off the bat, I think he's done well getting Dominic as early as he has done. Not forgoing like names like Rhea Ripley, etc. I think positioning wise, I think he's probably picked him at the right time, and he's been backed up with names like Mercedes Moné, etc. Hank and Tank. Obviously, they didn't do much last season, but I'm starting to wonder if their tag title reign is going to end sooner rather than later, maybe to the hands of Dark State, for example. But at least he didn't. He's got a good balance of between WWE and AEW picks as well, not to mention one from AAA. But he make like Mr. Iguana, for God's sake, Matt. I mean, you make one appearance on SmackDown, and all of a sudden he's a hot commodity over names like Trick Williams,
And they were at
Will
SummerSlam.
Ospreay, etc.
They were
Oh
at
yeah. He
SummerSlam.
made an
Yeah.
appearance at SummerSlam, but in the crowd, but still counts, I suppose.
There's got 3 champions, one person who's in a championship match at Forbidden Door, and also Kevin last recently on NXT, Chelsea Green popping up on Tuesday night, so she may be going back between both the main roster and
Yeah.
NXT. So Chelsea Green may be a surprising hit for the 5th round. But then we go over to
that appearance on NXT has really got me a little bit more confidence in my team, and for good reason.
then we got Tsunami time with Gary Morris's team with Tiffany Stratton as his first round pick and captain. Matt Smith hasn't really given a captain yet, so that's why we didn't mention it. But I assume it would be Dominic Mysterio.
I would assume so, yeah.
Braun squared as they put down here, which is Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed, so it's smart to take them as a team. Drew McIntyre, Jordan Grace, Christian Cage, and Nick Aldis with the authority figure for the appearance points down at the end there. But starting off quite strong. I mean, Drew, back in the mix now. He's got won at the tag team match at SummerSlam, so let's see where he goes now that Cody Rhodes is champion. He could step up as a challenger. Braun squared will be appearing all over the shop as Seth Heavy. Tiffany Stratton still reigning strong as the women's champion. Jordan Grace is in that feud with Blake Monroe on NXT. Even Christian Cage, I think they're going to slowly be pushing him against the Patriot Chain, maybe a reunion with Adam Copeland. So, on paper, Gary Morris has got a really solid team. Even these lower round picks could really pay off.
Yeah, I like this team a lot, mainly just because, Christian Cage obviously gone through a bit of a character change. He looks like he could be aligning himself with Edge again going forward. Nick Aldis, ideal for round 6, appearance points everywhere. You could probably get at least 2 or 3 per SmackDown. Sometimes he appears on Raw as well. But yeah, Tiffany Stratton on the captain didn't quite work out for me last time, but now that things are starting to be a bit more frequent in terms of PLEs, War Games coming up, I think Tiffany, as long as she can get some title defenses under her belt, then that'll be a good choice. Bronze Squared will be all over the place with the division. Drew McIntyre could easily challenge Cody Rhodes somewhere down the line, maybe even as early as Clash in Paris following that win at SummerSlam. And Jordan Grace, we said last season, if there's any season you want to pick Jordan Grace, it's probably this one because it will be a case of, not if, but when she wins the NXT Women's Championship. I think Gary is an early favorite based on that team. Probably top 3, if I'm being safe.
I definitely think he is the tool to be a dark horse for this season. Speaking of Blake Monroe, who's feuding with Jordan Grace, she's the second round pick of the Essex Elite, which is Dan Axel Jameson's team. Hangman Adam Page being his first round pick and his captain, then Blake Monroe, the Young Bucks, Gunther, Adam Pearce, and Mrs. Wayne or Mama Wayne, whatever you want to call her. But he's went with picks who won't be wrestling, so relying solely on appearance points for those last 2. Gunther, I don't think he did much on the Raw after SummerSlam, so we don't know where he's going in terms of after his World Championship loss. But the Young Bucks have got a storyline still going off on AEW. Blake Monroe still hot on in terms of her push on NXT, and then also Hangman Page as the World Champion going forward. I did consider Hangman Page briefly for my first round pick before going with something else, so I'll get to. But the top 3 at least I think are solid for Dan.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with AEW or former AEW talent in this instance. I think that's where Dan's mind went. The Bucks obviously are starting to come back after a bit of a tenure away, even though they've lost their EVP status. Blake Monroe seems to be the most talked about thing in NXT at the minute as far as the women's division goes. Hangman Page is the world champion. I think that was a no-brainer, get a world champion right off the bat. Although he was chosen after the names such as the Wyatt Six, Stephanie Vaquer, Jacob Fatu, etc. So that's something to consider. Maybe Dan got who he wanted ahead of his selections if he was going AEW heavy. But I think where it goes downhill is probably in the second half, because Gunther is apparently out with nose surgery at the minute. So he's getting his nose fixed, which is why they had that spot to essentially write him off as a result. So we don't know how long he's going to be out for. So Dan might have sealed himself straight away. Adam Pearce, though, I suppose same case as Nick Aldis, round 5, Scrap Daddy appearance points all over the product. I think that's fair enough for round 5, round 6. And same could be argued for Mrs. Wayne. But the number of non-wrestlers on his team towards the end, I think that might hamper him, especially when one is already essentially put on the injury shelf for we don't know how long. And I don't really know how long that sort of nose surgery takes to get fixed. He could be back in a few weeks. He could be back at the end of the year, could be back at the Royal Rumble. So, Gunther could be sitting at a big fat 0 in case we don't know like how long the recovery time is. So, yeah, Dan, I think, may have shot himself in the foot on the second round or second half of selections.
Yeah, I mean, we actually have seen it before. Those who are still discovering this draft, people have finished on 0 points before. Also, we shouldn't explain to people who don't know Scylla. It's a reference in our chat where the GOAT David Campbell shares the same clip of Cilla Black singing the song from Surprise Surprise, which is always shared whenever something unfortunate happens to someone's team. That's kind of a rubbing the salt in the winds there.
Could be injury, releases, maybe
people have been
jailed
released
in
mid-season.
extreme circumstances. But yeah, things like that.
I can remember back in 2021, the great release purges, every couple of months there was a big wave of releases. That was a scary thing for the draft for a while.
The whole COVID releases, I believe they called them.
So JP with El Grande Excuse.
El Grande Cos.
Yes.
Although that's a combination of Spanish and French for some reason, even though the El Grande Americano he's chosen is German. So he's a bit of a international relations type of team here.
I realize now, actually, I said JP was drafting first. I don't know why I said that in my head. It's Grammy Robbie that was drafting first, but JP got a higher spot in the drafting league because of his listeners' league when Grammy Robbie was everything else was a random order. So Grammy Robbie is drafting from first. I don't know why I thought JP was drafting from first, so Mandela effect possibly. But David Campbell in our chat did describe this team as scary. Let me see what you think here. So Jacob Fatu, first round pick, with a guarantee he's becoming much more of a player in the first round in the recent season, despite the fact he didn't regain the US Championship at SummerSlam. He's got Paul Heyman, another person for appearance points. JC Jane, the NXT Women's Champion. El Grande Americano, the current Ludwig Kaiser, allegedly, version. Street Profits, the tag team. And then Lash Legend, who's doing a thing with Nia Jax in NXT, although their match this week, he didn't really get any points on that side because we're not scoring. But what do you think?
Nia Jax, I think she defeated Thea Hale this week, and then there was a clash between the two of them.
So hopefully, if Lash gets the win over Nia, that'll pay dividends. Because a lot of people were thinking Lash Legend should have been called up ages ago anyway.
Yeah, so big meaty women slapping meat. That's what everyone wants to see.
So with JP, do you think? Do you agree with David Campbell's assessment? Is this a scary, team? Because there's some people who you might underestimate at first. Because a lot of people, Casey Jane's been done no favors with her NXT Women's Title, and she's won it, and I think she could be built up to be credible. But they've just decided to go, oh, by the way, it's weird that you're a champion because you're crap. Everyone who she confronts says you're easily beatable, and then they lose to her, which makes them look bad.
Yeah.
So she's fallen down further than I think she should.
Well, you've got a very good mix of talent here, although I think where the difficulty is going to be is how El Grande Americano is going to be booked, because I've seen reports that he's meant to be a major player in AAA going forward, and since WWE's obviously acquired AAA from WrestleMania, apparently he's going to be taken as a more serious character in some aspects, whereas in WWE he's feeling like a bit more of a sideshow. And with obviously Chad Gable ruled out because of injury, Ludwig Kaiser has to take the helm along with the other two Americanos, the British ones, I believe. So it's a full blown global grande warfare at the minute. But I think JP's done well with his last two picks. Picking up Lash Legend, who's getting a lot of momentum in NXT, the Street Profits. Again, same case with Steven's team. Pick one of the guys from SmackDown, and I think you've got a solid tag team to work with. JC Jane, on the other hand, that's going to be an interesting one, like you said. I think everybody's just sort of beat her down a little bit, saying, "Oh, she's a transitional champion, etc." But look what happened when she beat Masha Slamovich for the TNA Women's Knockouts title as well. I think there's going to be more to JC Jane than people give her credit for, and I think that's where JP could slip in a few extra points. And with Paul Heyman in the division, I think appearance points are pretty much guaranteed. Round 2 selection, when he's typically, in later rounds, I think that just goes to show how much priority, you want Paul Heyman in your team, because he's the manager to have out of everybody. So Jacob Fatu with the captaincy could be hit or miss, but I think getting him round 1 when he's a very over performer on SmackDown, I think that's a great way to get off the board. Is he worth being above names like Tiffany Stratton, Rhea Ripley, Dominic Mysterio? I think JP's... It's a bit bold, but I think it's probably the best choice for a captain he could have had.
Bold strategy, Ken. Let's see if it works out for him.
Yeah, that's all I'll say. Bold strategy.
Yeah, it is interesting that he's went as far, like, before some people, like even like Hangman Page is directly after him and people like that. So we'll see if that plays out. But I think it's his popularity that's put him in that position. But
for sure.
then we go to David Gamble, I mentioned, who has Stephanie Vicaire in the first round with the captaincy applied. Then Soul Score, the US champion, Raquel Rodriguez and Roxanne Perez as a tag team. And then Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler separately. And then Eva, the NXT general manager, on as the final round pick. Now it's interesting what he's done with the FTR here, because everyone's like, "Oh, it's bait, it's bait." No one's figuring, like, I don't know why Eamon didn't pick the other one, because like Dave was going to get points for Dax Harwood regardless of that. So he's basically double ensured that they'll be scored separately. So if they get a win, it's double, basically like a singles win, singles like points for him, singles for him.
You know what? I think he's been taking notes from the Listeners League as well, because I've seen some Listeners League teams who took two halves of tag teams and they've actually ran rampant with the scoring. I'm pretty sure some folk picked like Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill as two separate picks, or was Bianca and Naomi? Either way, getting those two as singles picks when they're going as tag champions, I think that's a very smart play from the go. And the fact that he was able to do it during the snake draft format, it just goes to show maybe nobody was willing to take the bait. Maybe they were gambling on maybe a better pick outside of FTR in this instance. So I can see what the GOAT's trying to do, and it is a very interesting approach. But he's kind of working technically with two tag teams at the minute now. So you've got FTR's two singles picks, and he's also got Raquel and Roxanne, who lost their rematch for the women's tag titles. It does make me wonder, though, where do Raquel and Roxanne do next if they're not challenging for the women's tag titles, when Charlotte and Bliss seem to be the hot act at the minute? The Team Hell No 2.0 sort of vibe they've got going on. But him getting Stephanie Vicaire and putting the captaincy on her straight away, I think that was a no-brainer. She was the top scorer last season, and she's got a title match against Naomi at Clash in Paris. Will she win it? Possibly. But I think it'd be a no-brainer to have the captaincy on her at this point when she's done so well in just this year alone.
Yeah, Stephanie Vicaire has really shut up the table, even since her NXT days, to a first round priority to get, because WWE is so behind her. I don't think she'll get the win though at Clash in Paris. I'm not just biased because of one of my picks, but she will probably bounce back and be featured from on Raw coming out of it. Solo, the MFTs is a really strong second round pick. Raquel and Roxanne, I think, is a smart one. Again, like a different team that we're going to talk about, is taking two female picks off the board. But because I think Roxanne has been really strong since coming up. I think she had that really strong, nearly year-long reign with the NXT Championship, and then she had come up to the main roster. She's been doing very well points-wise. Raquel, I think, is really underrated in terms of her points win, because she's with Roxanne and before that she's with Liv, and everyone's always focused on who she's tied up with. But when they get points, Raquel also gets points. The multiple tag title reigns, that all adds up to her overall average. So I think
Yeah.
Raquel is very underrated in terms of a pick. So getting those two
As a
together,
solo pick, maybe, but as a tag team with Roxanne, when they could
yeah,
potentially be competing as solo competitors going forward, I'm not so sure.
so I don't think there's going to be any proper split between them because I think they're waiting for anything to develop with Roxanne properly until Liv comes back, and we don't really have a
Mm,
timeline as to when that is. So I think the judgment are all appearing together, including these two together. So because the tag team has to both be on screen together to get the appearance points. So I definitely think on appearance wise that'll help, and I think there's still a few more tag matches in there before a proper breakup. So I can see
mm.
why, and I know even if it doesn't work out, at least he's waited till at least round three to get the tag team in. But Alan McLucas, and I think it's been
Oh
commonly
God,
agreed this is possibly one of the worst picks we've had in a long time.
where do you
In terms
start
of
with this?
teams, yeah, we've not a team as I mean, Wyatt Six is a tag team. Gacy and Loomis, I'm not against them as a tag team. They won the TLC match at SummerSlam. It doesn't seem like anyone's firmly built up to beat them just yet. But in round one, because it used to be a case in the draft way back when where we had to do the tag team first and then go into
Mm,
singles. He could have picked literally any one singles tag team, male, female, that he wants at this point. So going for the White Six this early is interesting. And then Kazuchika Okada, who could have been easily a good first round pick with the new Unified Championship. Saul Rooker, the NXT North American Women's Champion. Again, another solid pick. Bailey going to a thing with Lyra here. Brody King's interesting one, but again, it's the fifth round, so people are starting to choose about it. I still think there are people
oh
who
gosh.
should have been picked over Brody King, and I won't argue. I think there was part of me that thought about taking this last pick myself, but then ultimately was between him and a few other people, and then Alan seemingly made the decision for it by taking him himself, and that's Roman Reigns, who
Mm,
seemingly was written out on Raw to go do a filming project.
the
It's
film.
not just that though. Roman's been listed here as the captain.
Oh, like just
Well,
when
he's the
you've
one
got
highlighted on our sheet. It's usually the name highlighted that's the captain. So I'm going off that. So it seems from what I see that Roman is the captain here.
yep, Stephen
And I should
confirmed it on the
mention, by the way,
selection show. Yeah.
for the people who don't know, you only get one captaincy change per season. You get a chance to change if it's
Mm,
not working out to go to a team who's made perform better because the captaincy doubles whatever points that person is getting than they would be otherwise. So, and it takes effect from the Monday following the change. So, like, how soon he's gonna how long it's going to take for him to realize that Roman's not coming back for a while and change it to someone more fitting. Like I'd argue Kazuchika Okada, or even I'd argue Saul Rico over Roman Reigns at this stage. But a lot of
mm,
people are arguing that this may be one of the worst teams we've ever had.
yeah. Honestly, like I don't know what kind of paint thinner he was sniffing when he decided to put the captaincy on Roman Reigns, especially when, as we've mentioned, he's off to film a movie and he won't be back until around the end of the season. So the sooner he picks up on that, the sooner he has to apply that captaincy change. And if I was him stuck with this dumpster fire of a team, I would have to put it on Okada at this stage. Because I think Sol Ruka could potentially be in danger of dropping the women's North American title. Maybe if Zarya ends up costing her in some capacity, those two could have a feud. And if I was a betting man, I really hope that Sol Ruka, she successfully defended it. She defended it this week. I can't remember who against, but somewhere down the line, I really hope she drops it to Miss Parker.
Yeah, that would be a solid option. I think it's not just that the picks themselves are bad. I mean, Brody King is an anomaly on his own as a singles pick. I don't think it ever really happens. He's been picked maybe part of a tag team with the House of
Mm,
Black, him and
House of
Black or
Black,
him
yeah.
and Adam Murphy. Uh, But so he's an odd tape. I think the other ones, they're not bad picks on their own. It's just I think either it's a combination of the timing of when they've been picked and the
Mm,
positioning of when they've been picked. Like the White Six over Okada
yep.
and Bailey at
Over
this point.
Stephanie McCare as well. He could have had Stephanie
Hmm.
McCare, who was, like we said, biggest scorer last season.
Hmm. But I think what Alan may again not knowing about Roman going, I think he may also get caught up in the fact that there were still quite a few big names
Mm,
left in the last round. They got like people to talk about the fact that some people who didn't get taken, like Will Ospreay didn't get taken. Like I think he said he's hoping to be back for Forbidden Door, but he hasn't confirmed that he's going to be back because Forbidden Door is only a couple weeks away, and we don't know what's happening with Will Ospreay because he's been talking about injuries he's having. So maybe that put some people off. But yeah, I don't have the highest hopes. I mean, the top three being champions, if they've got some solid title defenses, then Allen makes a move to switch the captaincy, it will save himself from being in last place. But Bailey, I think, has overall been putting a few with Lyra here to help build Lyra back up again. So I think
Mm-hmm.
overall he's probably going to lose that. And if either of these lose their belts, then Allen's in trouble. So I think strong performance from at least one of his champions will save him from dead last, but I don't see him going higher than the lower half of the table.
Not a chance. I reckon he'll be relegation zone at best. So bottom three.
Bottom three, yeah, I think it's good. But we talked about Gary Kieran, a man who needs a win, and he's got a team that consists of Becky Lynch, Randy Orton, Penta, The New Day, Darby Allin, and Nikki Cross, aka Abby the Witch.
Mm-hmm.
Becky
Meat
Lynch,
mental Nicky.
coming off a retention of the Intercontinental Championship, seemingly going to a thing with Nikki Bella, which I think is definitely a cert for you can
Oh, that's
spell a cert.
a steal for Team Viscera right there. Getting Becky Lynch right off the bat. New theme, new program now that Lyra Valkyria is no longer a threat for her. But I reckon if they're going to elevate the women's intercontinental title, I mean, who better than to get the John Cena's ex involved? Am I
Yeah.
right?
I mean, you got Randy Orton also over in SmackDown coming off a lost SummerSlam, but again, Cody's the champion again, so Randy and Drew could be mixed up in there. So solid for second round. Penta, they're not really doing much with Penta, so it probably makes sense to pick him in the mid part of the table.
Mm,
New Day, I really don't have much to say because really, looking at the tallies, I'm more optimistic about any team that was picked from the SmackDown side than the Raw side, outside
hmm
of say JD and Finn, because the Raw tag division's doing next to fuck all right now.
Yeah.
Darby with the thing against the Death Riders upon his return, I think for that late on in the game, if you're not going to go with someone like a Will Ospreay, I think Darby's one of the better AEW picks you could get, and then Dickie Cross to make up the numbers in terms of the 3-2 split. And I think really since you took on the Abby the Witch thing, I don't think she's actually wrestled at all
No.
on TV. So appearance wise is what you're counting on there.
Yeah, appearances with the Wyatt six. I think for round six though, it makes sense, and I think just sort of piggybacking off of that Wyatt six tag team selection, I think Nikki Cross was probably you could have had worse selections for a round six, but getting back onto the AEW train with Darby Allin, that's probably I think if he's just sort of hedging his bets across the companies, there could have been worse picks outside of Darby Allin, especially when it looks like he might be going into a feud with Mox going
Mm-hmm.
forward. The New Day have kind of just fallen a bit flat a little bit. They've went the same way as John Cena's heel turn did a little bit. Woods just walking around with his giant hat, and I don't really see any pathway for them to regain the tag titles at this stage if the Judgment Day are going to drop them to a face team. But which face team though? That remains
Yeah,
to
there
be
aren't really many on Raw.
Mm. But the New Day are getting appearances and they are heat magnets, kind of like Dominic Mysterio. So I can see the logic in why he chose them. But yeah, I think for Team Viscera, I think Becky needs to have one hell of a run this season if he has any chance of breaking the top five, I dare I say.
I think he's put a lot on Becky and Randy there near the top.
Mm.
I agree that Gary really needs to win. I'm not entirely certain this is the team that gets him there.
No, I don't see this be a winning team.
But I hope he's in the middle to upper half of the table. I'm hoping for is what for Gary.
Mm-hmm.
David, then we come to your team, the West End
Mm-hmm.
Country Club, and I'm going to read out your picks, and then you can just give us your process,
Please do.
as concisely as you can, please.
Sure.
Uh, your first round pick is the tag team with Charlotte Flair and Alexa Bliss. Both let the
Yep.
captaincy applied. We should mention Gary Kernan and what Alan Lucas didn't have any. Oh yeah, sorry, Gary Kernan didn't have a captaincy applied to his team. That's why we didn't mention it. But yes,
Yep.
your team got Charlotte and Bliss as the captain, as the tag team as well.
Yep.
Ethan Page, North American champion, Io Sky, Damian Priest, Ricochet, and Miss Parker from NXT down at the bottom. So Dave, please explain those as your selection. You were
So
picking fifth overall.
I admit, it kind of looks like a mid card team on paper, but there is method to my madness here. I wanted Charlotte and Alexa Bliss off the board straight away because given they sort of came together as like, a bit of an odd couple tag team, definitely not BFFs essentially. And now that they've won the tag team titles, I think, they're going to be all across the product, but they'll continue this storyline of, we're not friends, where they're playing that game. We're a good tag team, but end of the day, we're not friends. And I think the crowd is really getting invested in that. So I figured it would be a big sin to have missed out on those two, especially when you get two very potentially strong female picks as solo competitors, pick them up as a tag team and just make it a little bit difficult for everyone else. So yeah, I'm very pleased that you chose Naomi ahead of those two in that case.
You said I took the bait. I don't know what bait you're fucking talking about, man. As if you suggested something to do with Naomi, or when I
Yeah,
took it, oh, you picked on the team.
I was projecting. Yeah, I was projecting choose Naomi or choose Tiffany.
We're projecting a lot of bullshit from the sounds of it. So like, I made a pick based on my own
Yeah,
choices. Because
I
you
was.
think I didn't? I completely forgot this. You're never getting. I mentioned this pick to you when we did one of our last shows as SDL. I mentioned
Mhm.
this as a suggestion to take
And
people
the
off the
reason you
board.
did, and I'm
Don't
surprised you
ask
didn't,
me why I didn't pick them. Don't ask me fucking why I picked them. I
because you
probably
get no
had my reasons.
reason, you get no excuse. That's why. But anyway, back to my team. Ethan Page, I wasn't entirely confident with at first. I thought, maybe I'm having buyer's remorse here. But given what happened on NXT this week with Chelsea Green and the Secret Harvest, I think we've got a potentially strong faction, a Canadian faction to be going forward, even though the Secret Harvest are Scottish. But that I digress. I think this Chelsea Ethan partnership could be something that really heightens the North American title division. And with so many hungry mid card challengers in there, I think Ethan Page it could have a generational run this season with the support of Chelsea Green. Now, the rest of them, I say it was more just like pick and choose being stuck in the middle of the draft. I wanted Io Sky because, she's borderline main event talent. And even if she doesn't directly challenge for the women's world title, I reckon she's going to have a series of good matches and she'll pick up a fair amount of wins on TV as well as have appearance points backstage. Damian Priest, a very reliable competitor on SmackDown. I think he's more of like a sleeper pick these days. He's got the feud with Aleister Black coming up. He may have won it by disqualification, but I imagine he's going to be looking for a measure of revenge in some capacity. So if they have, like, say, a blow off match at Clash in Paris, that could be big points there for him. Uh, but either way, I think he'll be a solid TV performer, and if the more often he gets wins, the more points, the better. Ricochet, again, I wanted MJF, but you stole him under my wing, so he felt more like a backup option in this instance. So, I mean, he's been good with heel work as of late, although he has taken a bit of a backseat when they were doing like all-in promotion and stuff. So here's hoping he can bounce back on that. And as for Jada Parker, I reckon she's in line to be the next women's North American champion. So, because she's had brushes with the NXT women's title picture, she's been in a fatal four-way at Stand and Deliver. I reckon Jada is in a very good position alongside Lash Legend to be the big names of NXT going forward.
I understand Jada Parker kind of in terms of a last round pick in terms of say Damian Priest and Ricochet are solid mid carders, I think, at the minute. So it's hard for me to judge where they'll be in terms of the lower points. I mean, Damian Priest in a weird position, like he's doing this feud with Aleister Black right now, so
Mm-hmm.
Black is still fairly new. You think, oh, they want to give him the win, but Damian Priest is a former world champion, so you maybe want to keep him strong. So it's weird where that's going to go. Io, correct me if I'm wrong, is she not scheduled to have a women's world championship match coming up on Raw? Am I?
She is, yes.
Which I think she's
And
going to lose. So unfortunately
well,
for her,
well, hang on. I don't think she's going to win the title, but there's every chance she could win by disqualification.
you are fooling yourself there. But then also, I think at some point she's going to continue a non-title feud with Rhea,
Rhea
with all
Ripley.
three being the whole can Rhea finally beat Io, and
Mm,
that's it. Rhea on the path to go back after the women's title.
yep.
Now, a lot of your team does lie on Charlotte and Alexa Bliss here because, and it works for two reasons. One, Charlotte seemingly has influence in this pairing because apparently she extended the run of the team, like they were meant to blow off and have a match at
Mm-hmm.
SummerSlam. So Charlotte's extending. So as long as Charlotte's getting away, something is happening. And
Yep.
also, when you build up two singles fights like these two in terms of a tag team, and you have a division that's not really as cared for as much as the women's side division really is right now, you run into a position as to who in the near future do you build up to
Mm,
face them. Then the question also comes in, how regularly do they defend the titles?
mm.
Because they already did a match on Raw. We don't know what's happening on SmackDown at the time of recording this, and how often will they be defending those belts? So we'll see what happens there. And
They
there was
can be all
an
over the product though, and that is key for appearance points.
that is key. This could be the closest thing we've had to the days of the golden role models, Bailey and Sasha Banks.
Mm-hmm.
Although we should never forget in the SummerSlam Survivor Series season of 2020 when Dave Campbell picked the team, even though they were no longer champs, I think,
Yep.
by that point, and then they lost a match and then broke up within 2 weeks of the season starting. And Dave, I'm not a malicious man, But I do, from the bottom of my heart, hope that happens to you. Moving on to my team, Yeet Dreams Are Made of These, which was a
Yep. Can
second.
I tell you what? Let's do a role reversal here. I'll go through your team and then you break down your selection process. How does that sound?
You go right ahead, sir.
All right, yep. So we've got your team, Scott. Yeet Dreams are made of these, and no surprise, you've got Naomi as your team captain, the world heavyweight champion, and you've got Jey Uso, Lyra Valkyria, Fraxium as your tag team, along with MJF and Edge. So very lot of shortlisted single named teams here or single initial teams here. Uh, I think you choosing Naomi off the bat, I can see what you were doing there. The character work from her has been excellent since, the start of the year. And yeah, I think a decent selection all round. You stole MJF from under my wing, so I think for
And I'm
round
very
five,
happy
that's a bit
about
of a
that.
steal. But yeah, I want to hear your thoughts. What was your thinking on this team?
Okay, so I had quite a few people else picking fourth and then also coming back for the snake draft. So I knew I was in a weird position when it came would have come back round to me in the second round, but I had a few people as well as Naomi that were circling around in my head singles wise. And Naomi I think was very underrated going into it under like nobody really thought Naomi would have the performance she would end up having last season when she would win the Money in the Bank and cash in, win and then end the season winning at SummerSlam with the championship. So I think also I want to take a few risks this season. Yeah, I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people have been playing it far too safe, proceed with caution and all that. So I picked Naomi first. Okay, I definitely think this is before I even knew she's having the match with Io this Monday Night Raw, which I'm hoping she will win. But also, I don't think Stephanie Rickier just yet is going to get as heavy a push on the main roster as she got immediately on NXT. So I do think she's looking at a clash with the belt, and I think it ultimately will lead to a eventual match somewhere later in the season or after the
Mm-hmm.
season with Rhea Ripley. So I'm hoping for a couple more months with Naomi as the champion, which is why, given the fact she's got immediate defenses coming up, is why I put the captaincy on her.
Makes
And Jey
sense.
Uso, as I mentioned on the second show, you're probably one of the only people on my team worth it down. Like I saw the overall table for last season, my team finished third, and I'm like, how? And I think a lot of that is off the back of Jey Uso, despite his World Championship loss midway through the season. So putting him back in there second round, the fact that he dropped because of the World title loss maybe is why he dropped down so far. And then by this point, I know all three picks are going to be on Raw, and I had a few other people in mind, but then I thought, okay, I got a woman in the first round because I think my female picks have let me down in the last couple of seasons to an extent. Both of them let me down last season. And then I thought, okay, if I get a female here in the third round, I don't have to be under pressure of needing a female in the later round, which I think can a lot of other people fell into. So who I think, and then I thought she's coming off a thing with Becky, but then she'll probably get a win over Bailey. So I got Lyra because I think Lyra's really getting over at the minute. Fraxium in the past performed well. I think they're one of the better performing teams on SmackDown. A possible title shot later on. MJF. When you were saying you're waiting for my thing to say don't let it be who you think it is, I didn't know who you're thinking. And I'm like, oh, please let this be the same one. And when you said it,
Mm-hmm.
oh, how I laughed.
Yeah.
MJF has got that
Not the first
contract.
time you've done that either. Reading my mind and then taking a pick as soon as I'm about to choose them.
So I think he's got a title shot, or at least he'll have a title shot for the world title at some point. Could he win the title? It's hard to say. But he's doing stuff for the Hurt business, not getting appearance points. He will eventually challenge Hangman. It's a shame we're not doing having he's not having the match next week because he's got a match this week with Mark Briscoe, which I'm sad I'm not going to get scored any points for.
Mm-hmm.
Then I thought, oh, take a risk in the last round, take some risks that you don't know. So I thought, oh, Roman Reigns, that would be very risky. I didn't know about the film at the time. And then Alan Lucas made that choice for me. So who can
Mm-hmm.
I get on it? Fuck it, go with Colt, go with Anime Copeland, for the last round. So I am trying to take a few risks with some of these picks. I mean, some of them have performed for me well before, but it's just whether or not this season comes around. Because sometimes timing is very key with some of these picks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as you mentioned before, like the selection order balance team just felt all over the place and just didn't make any logical sense in
Yeah.
a lot of ways. But I like how people are taking more gambles this season. It's because a lot of people, like, even though their teams look pretty safe on paper, you have to remember the stake draft sort of takes away the the sort of the desire to get the team that you want ideally. So you just have to time things spot on.
Mhm. Also, think we do. So even if it's just the second round, I think you'll still have a thing with division, and he's still one of the most over people in the company.
Mm.
So guaranteed multiple appearance points on TV, I think. So he's still worth having on the team.
Let's just hope he just doesn't get gassed too quickly either. Because if you've been
We go
watching
into
WWE Unreal, you'll see that he got a bit of a word in his ear about getting too gassed before going into his matches.
we have a few teams left. We have I promise that I don't like that other Brock either with Tom Brock, uh, with timeless Tony Storm,
Mm.
who's going to face Athena. I think Athena's title shot at Forbidden Door for the Women's Championship. TNT champion Kyle Fletcher. See, what's coming back around to me before you. So part of me at one point the TNT title Quad America, I thought, oh, Kyle will have a long way now. He's here. I thought, no, Scott, you've been burned by the TNT title far too many times. It's a toxic relationship. Cut all ties with that thing. Let Tom have it. So
Hmm.
yeah, Kyle Fletcher, AJ Styles, who's seemingly still going to come after Dom with the Intercontinental Championship. Nia Jax, who's appearing on NXT, as we said, Aleister Black, and then Will Hobbs and Shibata, who, I mean, for the last round down to tag teams, you probably not many options
Yeah,
left over. And
I
then
think Tom was
still a
scraping the.
question over them where in terms of the trio side with Samoa Joe, he got written out all in. I believe it's because he's still filming that Twisted Metal season 2 is
Yeah.
what he's filming. So, and they haven't really done anything to confirm what's happening with those belts since, which is weird.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know what they're really doing with the trios titles at this stage anymore. I don't know if they'll do a 2-on-3 scenario going forward, possibly. But I think Tom was really sort of scraping the bottom of the barrel when it comes to the tag team selection. And it just goes to show, you need to get your tag teams quickly. Otherwise, you're going to be left with some really, really poor options towards the end. And I think that's what's happened here. Aleister Black, I mean, while it was an interesting choice, I think going from round 1 to round 5, it just sort of highlights, the how much wins and losses can impact the draft selection order, because Aleister Black picked up 4 TV losses and he had the captaincy applied on him. So a bit of a faux pas for when Grant picked him last season. The fact that he's now in round 5 doesn't surprise me, but he is a good feature of SmackDown going forward. Kyle Fletcher's the TNT champion. I think this could be Tom's sleeper pick for this one, because obviously Tony Storm is where the money is with his points. Although, assuming she doesn't drop it to Athena at Forbidden Door, that could spell disaster for him if that happens. But at least he has a backup option with Kyle Fletcher if he does regular TNT title defenses. And we've seen the TNT title getting defended regularly week by week throughout past seasons, and it has helped teams rack up those points. I just hope, for Tom's sake, he can do a double whammy with these two big AAW performers.
Mm-hmm. I think he will be performing like leaning on his AEW side of things, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. Like I mentioned, the amount of AEW pay-per-views we have this season, we have 4,
Mm.
starting with Forbidden Door through to Full Gear. But Tony Storm keeping the belt against Athena will be a major determining factor there. I think part of the reason he only got Alistair Black was some Dutch solidarity there. So he's leaning on the
Probably,
AEW
yeah.
pick. He kind of chose the bottom of the barrel in terms of the tag picks he said, and then his WWE picks, and Naya is going to go down to NXT to really help get Last Legend over Aleister Black. We don't know what's happening with Priest. And then AJ, while you're wanting to get the Intercontinental Champion, I think if he gets the IC bit off the Dom, like they have a rematch in Paris, which a lot of people seem to
Mm,
want, given how the French crowd love
yeah.
AJ.
If they do a
Uh,
Dom AJ rematch, I think the French crowd are just going to go ballistic like they did last time
yeah,
when
that
he challenged
that
Cody.
AJ actually getting the IC title could be a major boost to
Mm.
him, but other than that, I think he's heavily leaning on his top 2 AEW picks. So let's hope that side performs well. Now, second person picking second in the first round was your friend Robert fucking Shaw in the draft
The
path.
treasurer of the West End Country Club, give him his proper title.
No, I will never call him that. It's Cody Rhodes as his captain because obviously in the first round, the person before him was the Raw champion. So of course you get the next best thing. You get the Cody Rhodes,
SmackDown
the guy, the
champion.
quarterback, the guy running SmackDown with the World Championship. You have him at the Hart Syndicate, Seattle mentioned Bobby Lashley, Julia, the women's US champion, which I think a lot of people kind of forgotten about because really she hasn't done that much. Like she came out with bloody the US belt. Didn't get much of an entrance in bloody Evolution with her belt, and people were like, "Oh yeah, you've got the title there." But John Moxley will probably be leaving TV soon after his feud with Darby Allin, Jake Cargill coming off a loss at SummerSlam, and then Tola Tonga, the artist formerly known as Hikuleo, not
Hikaleo,
Hikuleo.
whatever.
And also, before we get to it, because he's on the Grant McRobbie's team. It's Tekla, not Thekla.
For
Tekla.
God's sake.
He's
We're going back to,
no, no. Jack Graham nearly caused a
becoming.
whole international incident when he mispronounced Konosuke Takeshita. We are not going through this again.
Yeah, please don't sue us for mispronunciations. Whoever the
It's
FC
not doing his
or the
cancellation
grammar
we're worried about here.
or the
But
grammar dictators out there, etc.
yes, looking at Robert Shaw's team, I think Tolo Tonga is what he is. He's tall. He's just there to be tall and stand behind Solo in his appearances. So as long as the MTs keep appearing, he'll gather those points. Moxley, how long this program's going to last? Because I think a lot of people say he is overdue time off. So what happens with him there? Jade, can be built back up easily. She just needs to beat I don't know, beat up the secret harvest for a few weeks. That'll help build her back up. But he has three champions, solid champions near the top. I think they're probably up to Julia fighting Zelina Vega in a rematch, which I think will be a foregone conclusion there. Cody will have probably carry that belt, I assume, through WrestleMania. Hurt Syndicate
Yeah.
have been built up to be pretty much unbeatable. But I think on paper, he's a strong upper half dark horse team, does Robert Shaw.
I reckon he's a top 3 team. I said this on the selection show. I think that's a scary team, just from looking at that. Because even if Talatonga doesn't compete as much, appearances with MFT is going to be good, especially when it's a second to last pick as part of the snake draft order. My only concerns is, does Mox go off on a bit of a break because he's done so much being a very lengthy AEW world champion, and how easily is Jade Cargill going to bounce back? So there's a few ifs on that team, but I reckon that Robert is in a very, very good position, especially with Cody as his team captain, because, I think this could be one of the best examples of a juggernaut team, because Cody will no doubt be all over the product. He'll probably get title defenses left, right, and center on PLEs, no less. And yeah, I think Cody's going to carry Robert to a very, very strong season.
Yeah, and I think it's a no-brainer. Like I said, with Cody as the captain. I mean, we had two new world champions coming out on both Raw and SmackDown. So obviously, if you're picking second overall in the first round with the way the snake draft's going, you basically need to wait and see what if the first round person picks the other one, you pick the other because both of them are going to do you very well, especially if the captaincy applied. Speaking of that, AI no better than you. Graham McRobbie, who usually uses dice, but seemingly is relying on AI to choose his team.
Don't
He
know if
got a
that's
solid
wise.
first round pick, but he may rely on a juggernaut performance, but it falls apart very quickly because Seth Rollins, number one pick overall, and I think that's definitely the best decision. Then we have Rusev, Tekla, Motor City Machine Guns, Julia Hart, and Mina Shirker. So a heavy lean on the AEW side. Motor City Machine Guns, I think, it's them and Faxium as to who might get built up next to challenge the Wyatt Six. Rusev, he's pretty much doing stuff with Sheamus and otherwise squashing people, so definitely not fit for the second round. But again, that you can put that down to the AI.
Yeah.
And all of this team was teasing that Grant's last pick, no one was going to pick anyway, and yeah, probably no one was going to pick me or Shaker. I know it's right to her, but
Hey,
her
come on, everybody
positioning,
loves Mina.
we do, but her position, picking AEW is not really qualify her as a must-have pick at the minute.
Which is why she was round 6. Very
Yeah,
last pick as well.
even then, given that she's also the last pick overall of the
Hey,
draft,
I'd have
it
chose
came
her over
right
Mr.
back to him.
Iguana, that's for sure.
I'm just saying. But honestly, I said this all in our group chat and I will stand by it. Anyone, and I might bite me in the ass because anything can happen to your team, but anyone who finishes below Grant McRobbie needs to have a strong look at themselves in the mirror before the next season because you're basically losing to an AI. And I've just read out that team to you. Like Seth, yes, will probably be a juggernaut, but a juggernaut can only do so much. Look at the rest of the team on paper.
Yep.
And tell me it's not embarrassing to lose to a team like that that's been, again, picked
Yeah.
by AI.
Unless Seth Rollins goes on one hell of a juggernaut season, I have no hope for Grant McRobbie winning this season. Not in the
I think Seth
slightest.
would have to be scoring an ungodly amount of points every Monday night to really carry Grant to a victory this season.
Yeah. I mean, the Motor City Machine Guns might only get them so far, especially if they're the ones to dethrone the Wyatt Six at some point. Although everybody else, it's sort of like a what if scenario. Like, which way are they going to go? Are Rusev and Sheamus just going to have a go each other back and forth? I mean, Rusev in round 2 is madness, especially when he could have chosen a beautiful madness in the form of Julia, for example. We know how much he likes to have a Julia on his team. You know, whether it's the beautiful madness Julia, whether it's Julia Hart, he just loves Julia.
Yeah, that's quite a few Julias, yes. But Dave, we've come to the end of the road, and we need to talk about who we think will be who will win the season, who we think will come in last, and who is the dark horse of the season. Maybe if they don't, that dark horse doesn't win, they will still finish far higher, maybe top three than anyone else probably
Yep.
thought they would.
Well, I'll stand by what I said in the group chat afterwards, just going on immediate thoughts in this instance. So, my pick, early favorite to win, is Robert. Like, I just can't ignore, Cody Rhodes as the team captain, and, his undercard tag team is looking pretty damn solid, all things considered, even though there is a bit of a what if scenario for some of them. My last place is obviously going to be Alan Lucas because I don't know if he was sniffing paint thinner or something, or maybe just trying to troll people again. With his picks, maybe try and make things a little bit tricky. But either way, it's dog shit, that team, and the fact that the if the selections weren't bad enough, the captaincy choice as well is really really screwed the pooch on it. And as for my dark horse pick, I'm actually going to go with Gary Morris on this one. Uh, Mainly because we mentioned Tiffany Stratton, as a strong captain in past seasons. Braun squared with the vision. Drew McIntyre, solid SmackDowner. Jordan Grace, solid NXT. Christian Cage on a redemption arc, and Nick Aldis for appearance points. There's not a lot to hate about this team, and I reckon if it all goes Gary's way, I think he could be a potential dark horse. But I wouldn't be surprised if people chose him to be first place either, because he looked very strong on paper to begin with.
Trying to be as objective as I can here. I'm between Robert Shaw and possibly the GOAT David Campbell. I mean, ideally, we don't want the same people winning multiple times, but I think it's more of an everyone else problem than the actual individual who keeps winning. Because David Campbell has some solid strategies in the past. At first, it may not seem we don't know what he's doing, but it really pays off. So I think it's between Robert and David for me. Alan McLucas, I definitely agree at last place, but I don't think Grant McRobbie and Steve Wilson will be far ahead of him. They will both be in the bottom half, but I couldn't say either of them for last because of how solid I think
Well,
both of their captains are.
I think you're being too harsh with Steven's team. I think Rhea
I'm
Ripley
really
and
not.
Oba Femi are going to do well for him.
I think based on the round of having Rhea and Seth respectively, I can't say either of them for certain will be last place. But I don't think I think the rest of the teams that let them down. Gary Morris again, a solid pick for Dark Horse. But you know what? In the sake of solidarity, I'm going to say my dark horse is Andy Mitchell. Andy Mitchell is my dark horse. He's the
Really?
people's dark horse. He's the people's champion, and I'm going for Andy Mitchell as my dark horse.
The
I'm
guy who
locking in
chose
right
Sami
now.
Zayn in round one.
Yes, because again, I think you guys are being too harsh.
Well, I don't know if you're sniffing the same stuff as Alan Lucas is sniffing, but it's I don't know where Andy Mitchell's dark horse selection comes from. I see him lower half at best at this stage.
I am like Stephen Wilson's third round pick, CM Punk. There's no drugs here. I have no drug free at the minute, pal. I'm thinking very clear. I'm using my analytic brain because someone has to around here, not just give their very biased opinions around here. So,
Hey, it's not biased when you can back it up with evidence.
so we are going to come back next week with the first scores of the season. We don't have a set date right now. We're doing this kind of midweek. You're hearing this on a Thursday on the YouTube channel, like I said, and Friday on our audio feeds. We'll have a set date next week. We're looking over the overall scores. But I'll say there's not much you can judge from the first week, but it's just nice to see who's immediately coming right out the gates. It's always a marathon, not a sprint. And then before you know it, we'll have all sorts of PLEs to be talking about going forward. Please, thank you very much for tuning into this first show, this team look over of the first season under the Wrestling Draft Panel, this 26th season overall of the fantasy draft here that we have. And we hope you will take part in the Listeners League if you haven't already. Stay tuned to the YouTube channel, to our social, to our podcast feed, where we get your podcast, to keep up with me and Dave and all our guests and see what's going on in the draft. But until next time, Dave, Thank you for joining me, and very good luck to you in this season.
May the odds be ever in your favor.
Indeed. I've been Scott McLeod. That's been Dave Haughney. Bye bye.